Today, I'm joined by Krista Josepha, who is the Executive Director of the Center of World Philosophy and Religion. And if you're a regular to this show, you will have seen that I've had Mark Gaffney on here and referenced him several times as I've really been deepening my relationship with him and the Center of World Philosophy and Religion, all the people that are there. And I know that we've got a long and deep future together to share. And I'm so excited to see that unfold. One of those things is the Eros Mystery School, which is a 5-day event in Belgium on the 21st to the 25th of August. And before now, I was trying to work out logistics to be able to go myself. And I'm really excited that I've managed to figure it out and I'm going to be there joining them. And it's Dr. Marc Gafni, who's the kind of primary teacher, along with Dr. Christina Kincaid and Krista Josepha also. They'll be sharing the Phenomonology of Eros, which really is this new story of value. It's part of the think tank that's really been crafting this most intricate and detailed story for humanity and breaking down things even down to words. What does desire really mean? What does intimacy really mean? To give a deeper context of life, of what we are, of who we are, and why we're here. And as I've been diving more into the Dharma myself, I just feel so much truth in there. It's a felt thing rather than a thought thing. So I'm so excited to be there. And if you feel called, if you've seen Dr. Marc Gafni, if you feel called to what Krista shares on this episode, then visit the links below if you want to come and join us over in Belgium for the 5 days. I already know it's going to be incredible after having spent some time together with everybody in Vermont about a month ago. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Krista gets into a personal story about her 5-day vision quest at 23, where she was out in the mountains on her own and what that process was like, her training as a priestess, her time as an intimacy coach and studying Tantra, and how that relates to some of the things that are involved in the phenomenology of Eros. And we really get into how sexuality is connected to our sense of aliveness, but not in the way that we understand it in the sense of it just being sex. One of the things that Mark says is the sexual models the erotic, and life is meant to be an erotic experience where we feel that erotic life force flowing through us all the time. At least that's what I got from it. But again, I'm so excited to be there at the 5-day mystery school to really deepen my understanding of the Dharma and what they teach in this new story of value that they call cosmo-erotic humanism. So I hope you enjoy this. Again, if you feel called, then visit the links below. We would love to see you there. And lastly, if you haven't yet done it, please subscribe. It really helps the channel. And of course, you'll get to see the other episodes that we've done so far. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy the show. All right. We are rolling, Krista Josepha.
Hi. Thank you for having me here.
So for people watching, which is why we're doing this, you are the Executive Director of the Center of World Philosophy and Religion. And for regular listeners, they will have heard that I was over in Vermont a few weeks ago at the board retreat there, where we got to meet in person, but we were developing a relationship before that. And it's been beautiful. And actually, this is the first podcast I've done with someone where I've actually kind of really begun to get to know them in advance. So that's cool. But that being said, I feel like we've really got to know each other's energy, but not necessarily each other's history, which is it's nice really, because it's almost like, well, I guess that kind of stuff isn't it doesn't need to be known to feel the energy of the person in front. And it's like, I know I feel this energy and I know that I want to deepen that relationship. And I feel like we've really been doing that. But I'm quite looking forward to this specifically to actually get to know more of the story of Krista and how everything came about to be involved in what you're doing now. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to share it and great to be here with you.
Yeah. So before we get into it today, I suggested we do something a little bit different that we've not done before. And Krista is a medicine woman when it comes to music, and so I thought we could start off with a little bit of that medicine, with a little bit of song.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah. So this is a Hebrew chant that I learned from my teacher, Mark Gaffney. And it's about the relationship between the human being and God or spirit or the divine. And that it all starts with trust. So I'll sing it in Hebrew first and then in English. שחזרת בנשמתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך שחזרת בנשמתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך רבה se אמונתך רבה se אמונתך רבה se אמונתך רבה אמונתך Oh great is your trust in me God great is your trust in me God great is your trust in me God great is your trust in me great is my trust in you God great is my trust in you God great is my trust in you God great is my trust in you oh great is my trust in you
So beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That really just also takes me inside and brings us inside this field as well. So
here we are. Yeah. So in a couple of weeks' time, there is a special event happening.
Yeah.
Tell us all about it. The mystery.
Yeah. I'm so excited. It's only 2 weeks from now. It's August 21st until August 25th. And it's called the Eros Mystery School. And it's actually the 11th edition of what was previously called the Outrageous Love Festival. And so every year, people from all over the world come to Europe, in Belgium, a beautiful castle where we come together, as we say, to take our seats at the table of history. So for me, it's really this revolutionary gathering of powerful leaders from all over the world kind of like a pilgrimage coming together to be on the inside together, to really formulate and articulate, but also mostly embody and activate in our bodies what we're calling this new story of cosmo-erotic humanism in response to existential risk.
Wonderful. And it is headed up by Dr. Marc Gafni, who's been on the show and I've referenced many times. And we're deepening our relationship and all of us together.
Yeah.
And really, it feels like laying the foundations for a lifetime to share together. And for people that have not heard of a mystery school in general, that might be a new term. What is a mystery school? Because it
Well,
sounds so mysterious.
it sounds mysterious, yes. I think everyone will answer that question differently, probably. For me, it's really answering the mysteries of cosmos. So, really connecting to God, to spirits inside of me, but also in the field that we share together. So, one person once calls the mystery school a taste of an enlightened society. So it really activates this field, this source code, this mystical field, but at the same time, it's very grounded. It's very much about us here as a human being, asking these questions: what does it mean to be a human being in these times, and what does reality need from us right now to show? How do we need to show up in these times? So it's both. What I really love about the teachings of Mark Gaffney and the whole work of the center is that it's really an integration of everything. It's the science behind it. There's a whole think tank of philosophers and scientists working together on this new story. But at the same time, it's really about my personal growth. How do I embody this new story? Who do I need to become? What is the greatness that wants to be alive in me? And then it's also about what can I do with that? How can I participate? And how can I contribute to actually creating a better world for everyone? So it's really all of those combinations. And in the mystery school, I think compared to other events that we have, sometimes it's more thinking together, like the symposium in Vermont that we had, and this is really more about the personal journey and embodying and activating this new story.
And Eros, for people that aren't familiar, I think that if they were to Google Eros, they might find one thing, but the way in which it's used within the center and the think tank is quite different. So could you give us a little insight into what the meaning is behind Eros? Because in those four little letters, I know there's a lot of meaning that's in this new story.
Yeah, a lot, yes. And Eros is one of the first principles of this new story and one of the core elements, maybe at the center of everything. And as Mark Gaffney always says, it's all about sex and it has nothing to do with sex. So, of course, Eros, people can associate that with sexuality or eroticism. And it is about that and it's not about that. It's much bigger than that. And so, sexuality is one expression of Eros, but Eros is really about the way that we translate it is or formulate it is the experience of radical aliveness. And that's in everything. It's in art, it's in creativity, it's in making music, it's in communities coming together, it's in writing, it's in nature. So really reconnecting to that field of Eros that is this experience of radical aliveness. And sexuality is one expression, one dimension of that, and it's very closely related, of course, and that's also why sexuality can be a great teacher of Eros, but it doesn't exhaust this big, vast, expansive field of Eros.
And do you think that for most people, the only time they pretend, or not the only time, but one of few times they actually get to experience that? And caveat, there's a lot of people that probably don't experience it in what I'm about to say. But for some people, the only time maybe they experience that aliveness is sexually. But again, there's probably a lot of people that still don't even experience it sexually.
Right.
Do you think like that's the case for a lot of people?
Yes. Yes, I think you're right. And probably because you've read the Dharma, you've studied the Dharma, but that's what we're calling the exile of Eros into sexuality. So most people can only experience that aliveness in sexuality, and then in one particular form of sexuality. So it's very, very narrowed down. And then what happens is that sexuality can't hold the depth of our longing and the depth of our desire for the fullness of Eros, and then it collapses. So then even in sexuality you can't experience it anymore. Yeah.
So it's a 5-day event. It's in
Right.
Belgium. It's in a castle. There's
Yes.
yourself that's going to be delivering there. There's Mark Gaffney, KK.
Yes, KK, yes. So this year is really Mark Gaffney, of course, is the main teacher and speaker. So he will be sharing and teaching every day. And then we have Christina Kincaid, who's Mark Gaffney's partner in many ways, but also in writing the book together called A Return to Eros. So they are partnering also in this retreat. So Mark will be sharing the teachings, and Christina Kincaid will be doing the armoring workshops every day. And she's very much practiced and studied in how do we actually open up our bodies and how do we heal the blockages that can be in our bodies and really let that melt open and breathe open, so this energy can flow through us again. This Shakti energy, this Eros energy can be more free in our embodied experience.
What does
And
that?
and then we have music. We have a lot of music. So we have amazing medicine musicians coming in from Israel. Shimon Leftahor, he's been with us for many years, and he's a great medicine musician, really weaving this field of Eros through music. Yeah.
Incredible. How excited are you?
I'm super excited, very excited. And this is actually the first year that I'm organizing everything. I've been there myself, not 10 years, but almost all the years I was there. And is the best place to be for me, and to be able to participate in creating this field and making it an amazing, beautiful experience for other people. Like we say, the in the principles of pleasure, the greatest pleasure, or the litmus test for genuine pleasure, is this desire to want to share it with other people. So I'm feeling very, very much like that.
Yeah, I've been trying to work out logistics to be able to make it there, and it's looking more likely that it's going to be possible. So
Yes.
it's looking very likely, actually.
Yes.
I'm
Okay, that's awesome. That's great.
yeah.
That's great. Yes, we always say we cannot do it without you, but in this case, it might actually be true. And I feel like you said, we resonate in so many ways, and us working together more and more. I'm really excited about that. And yeah, if we can just spend some time in that field together, I think it will be very, very inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to find out more about the areas of this that you kind of feel most intimately connected to. I was going to say most called to, but I know that you feel called to all of it, and the whole vision and the whole picture.
Mm.
But out of like the things that you've learned along this journey, what are some of the parts that you feel most intimately kind of connected with?
Definitely the Eros part. Yes, like the whole phenomenology of Eros that is almost done being written. How do you say it? That whole part, Eros, sexuality, intimacy, the future of relationships. That's really has always been like the thread of my own life and my own personal journey. Um, and the other part is really stepping into leadership and really claiming our power as a human being and showing up as the best version of ourselves that we can be. Yeah.
Hmm. So where did let's go back in the timeline now, because this is the bit that, we've not really touched on just between us in our private conversations of what does the timeline look like for Krista? Where did all this begin? I mean, I know how the birds and the bees work and how it began, but a little further on from that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was born. I think uh, I think they always often say that depression is number one reason for awakening. and reconnecting to God or spirit or however we want to call it. So for me, I think that was also the case, like hard childhood, trauma, searching in life for why am I even here, not even wanting to be alive, and really suffering from a lot of anxiety and depression. And so going through that journey, and then when I was in college, going into therapy, really working on myself on that kind of psychological level. So that's the first step. And then through that journey of personal development, I got in touch with meditation and mindfulness and spirituality. And then I did a priestess training. That was actually the first time really stepping into some sort of spiritual practice. So I had a teacher then taking me through this journey of initiation into the mystical wisdom of womanhood and priestessing. And a huge part of that was,
Yeah, I was going to say, let's not skip past that. What does that look like? What's priestess training?
yeah, it was a 2-year training, and then you could kind of stay in. So I was there for 4 years, and it was with women only. So it was really connecting to sisterhood and embodiment through all kinds of practices, dance, mostly rituals, learning also how to hold ceremonies and rituals ourselves. And it was really about making that connection between the human and spirit. Through going, she was modeling it as different layers of the earth world, the moon world, the sun world, and the stars. So the whole journey was reconnecting to spirit. And then we had a vision quest where we would spend 5 days alone in the mountains with no food, no roof over our heads, and no company, and just being in nature and really asking for a vision. And this is a deep shamanic ritual where you would spend time alone in nature with the intention to receive your legend, like why are you here, your mission, your purpose. What's the purpose of my life? And you would just sit there in nature and meditate and ask and dance and sing and cry and beg, like, God, please tell me, why am I here? And I think in a way that's also what Jesus did when he was in the mountains, connecting with spirits and asking for a vision. So that was a huge part of it.
All right, let's go into that. So day one, you on this vision quest.
Right.
How are you feeling? What is it like? What's going through your mind when you first arrived to do that?
Scared. And actually, there was a documentary made of that, so I still have, I can review it many times, and I still have it fresh, but also in my memory. I remember I think 23, so very young, and so I was really scared. And I was constantly saying, like, I want to know if it is real. I want to know if it is real. Whatever, God, spirit, I need to know that it's real. That I'm not just making this up. Because at the same time, I was studying religion science, and all the scientists and all the in all the ways we're saying religion is made up. It's a construct. It's psychologically functional for a human being to have faith, but it's not really real. So for me, that was a big question going in. And so I was scared. Being alone in nature is scary. With the, yeah. And then also not having food. I'm quite fond of food and in ways addicted to foods. It was like, don't take away my precious. I think that was the first time actually fasting. Also, I wasn't used to that at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's the first time fasting you did 5 days?
Yeah.
Wow. And water?
Yeah. Water. Yeah. You had water. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So did you arrive there in the daytime? Kind of
Yeah.
find a little space to settle in?
Yeah, you would have your base camp. So in that way, it was there was safety and there were space holders there, and the teacher was there. And then the first day, everyone would go out into nature and just find a spot that felt good for you to sit. So that's even part of the ritual. Like, where are you walking? Why are you walking there? What does it say about you? And so the first day we were walking, and then you would come back and tell the base camp where your spot is, so they know where you are, and they can keep you safe, and kind of they would kind of every day check up on you with an inocular, what's it called,
Binoculars?
Pinoculus, I
Right,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah,
Binoculars.
English. And so, but my story, and then the teacher would, at the end of your journey, kind of reflect back to you your mythical story, your mythical journey. And so my story was that I walked for, I think, 3 hours all the way, completely alone. Like other people would just walk 10 minutes from base camp and then sit there. But I was completely far away and very close to like a reef down. This is, I don't know, I'd say, but with a big view over the ocean and yeah, completely in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
And what was the experience? What came up? What came through? What were the emotions? Like day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What was the hardest day?
Probably the last one because there was a lot of thunder and rain.
Mm.
And you would do two big rituals, and one was a death lodge ritual. So you would kind of enact your own death with certain steps. But that one for me was just beautiful. I was somehow completely connected to death and dying and saying goodbye to everyone and then creating my own grave. And it was a beautiful experience. And then the next day, you would do a cry for a vision ritual. So you would sit alone in your circle. And then the idea was that you stay in one spot. So, good girl as I am, I would just sit there all night and chanting and praying and hours and hours and hours. So everything comes by then, like fear, wanting to quit, hating everyone, completely doubting myself. What am I even doing here? I'm gonna go back. Everything, depression, wanting to die, not wanting to die. And then it was beautiful weather all throughout the 5 days, but that night there was thunder and rain, so I got completely soaked. I was freezing cold. There was big wind coming in and then thunder. And so I was constantly in this duality of victimhood and power, which is a big part of my story. And so I would lay down and moan and cry, and I can't do it anymore. And then I would get up again and chant and sing and use all the tools that I had to re-access that energy and reconnect to Eros, to spirits. And then ultimately I was standing there and it was raining and thundering. And I just said, I don't fear your power. Let me be a vessel. And then the thunder would bang one last time. And then it just kind of left out over the ocean. So that's where I felt really like connecting to spirit and connecting to nature and the moon and the sun and the stars and everything, and realize like we are one with everything.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And as far as like experiences go in life for you, how kind of pivotal was that?
Very, yeah, it was like the blueprint of everything that came after and everything that came before. And that was kind of my first initiation. And yeah, and a big, like every initiation has two parts to it, and one part is feeling the oneness of it all, feeling the mysticism, feeling connecting to spirits, however you want to call that. But then the other part is that the personal self, the human self, actually has to claim it, has to say yes to it. So it's very easy in an initiation to really surrender and be like, oh yeah, I'm one with God, and just boom. But that's just the first part. And then the second step, which I missed the first time I had initiation, was it's me, actually. I'm claiming this power. I'm standing for this power. I'm showing up for this power. And that's also a very scary, scary part. But that was the first. And then after this whole journey, it feels like I had 2 cycles of initiations. And so that was kind of the feminine initiation. And then after that journey of years, that's when I met Dr. Marc Gafni. And that was a whole nother level, like completely different, but like the next layer of my journey.
So that was 23.
Yeah, something like that.
Let's keep going. What came next? Where did you go from there? How did like how did that affect your lived experience and up until the next kind of milestone or whatever that might have been?
Well, there's one other thing that was in that experience that's relevant is that in terms of what is my mission, why am I here? I had a very deep, intense experience of communicating with spirit, and what I felt in every cell of my body was the sentence: "Whoever makes love to me will never experience life the same."
Hmm.
And so that was intense and beautiful, but also very confusing because making love and intimacy and sexuality is always a big thread in my life. And then what does that mean? Am I supposed to sleep with people? What the fuck? So, and then, of course, later realizing that making love is so much bigger than sexuality, but all of that. But then, so coming down from that experience, it took me a long time to integrate what I've learned there, what I experienced there, and literally also coming down from the mountain, going back to the people and to ordinary life. And that was the whole second journey of that priestess training, was all about that. And then how can I share this with other people? So that was a big journey, integrating that, and also growing up in a way, to be able to be mature enough to hold the intensities of those energies.
Yeah, it's a huge amount to hold. Wow. Okay. I'm all the way in. Let's keep going.
Keep going. So yeah, I finished my studies as a religion scientist, and then I was naive enough to think that I could just start my own coaching business, which I did, and it kind of worked. But it was always hard work, and feeling also lonely in that. And it's a lot when you don't have a lot of experience in working, but then starting as an entrepreneur right away. So I was struggling a lot with that. Um, Yeah, and then so many years later is when COVID happened. We skip forward a little bit, um, and then everything kind of fell apart. The coaching business, I was giving tantric massages, I was doing intimacy coaching, and I was doing women's training in sensuality and womanhood, and then all of that.
Yeah, let me just ask what did that look like? What was the intimacy training and the work that you did with women?
Yeah, with women, it was in groups, and so it was a lot of sisterhood, working with touch, working with dancing, sensuality, embodiment, stuff like that.
And what would be the reason that women would primarily want to do something like that? What would be the calling for them? Was there like a common thread?
Um, I think feeling disconnected from our bodies,
Mm.
and also from each other. Like there's a lot of in normal public culture, often there's a lot of rivalry and jealousy between women, and also not the depth of sharing that we need to be able to heal. And then in terms of sexuality, most women have only experienced sexuality with a man, or intimacy or sensuality, or with yourself. But so it's really hard to know what you think is pleasurable in your own body when you immediately also experience that in the intimacy with another being. So being able to even just share with other women openly about those kinds of topics, and finding recognition in that. So for women to be able to connect with each other, in that space of intimacy, and then also practicing to touch not within the realm of sexuality, but actually to touch, um, in other realms, like in intimacy, in being able to open up to tenderness, because there's so much patterning happening in women. When you're intimate with a man, you have to behave a certain way, which you don't, but that's what we have in our minds. So when you're connecting with a woman and touching, you can kind of let go of all of that and really practice, like, okay, what does my heart really need? If I don't need to perform, if I don't need to do anything. And then also receiving a more like tender touch. So we would do tantric massage, but very tender, we're very soft and very focused on healing, and very much for being priestesses for each other and holding that space of healing and honoring the feminine body, whatever she looks like, and celebrating each other's beauty and greatness like that.
Is this like another case where we said before that most people only experience eros in the sexual? Can we also say that most people only experience sensuality in the sexual? Because what you're describing sounds very sensual,
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean it has to be sexual. And for a lot of people, the two are probably
yeah,
intertwined, and maybe they don't experience them separately.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yes, I think so. Yeah, and also touch. We're only touched when we are sexual, which is insane. We need to be touched in all the ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the intimacy coaching piece, and
Yeah.
then you got to COVID, all that kind of fell apart.
Yes, fell apart, and yeah, and that was kind of a relief already pretty soon, because um, I was finally able to let go of what I thought I should be doing, because intimacy was such a big thread in my life, and it is, and it should be, but also being able to just let go of everything and feel like, okay, what do I really want right now? And in that process, also being willing to just show up for what is needed from me instead of my own thoughts about what I thought I should be doing. So I didn't have anything to do at that time, and I was, of course, already in touch with Outrageous Love Festival and with Mark Gaffney. And so at some point, he invited me to step in to volunteer with One Mountain Many Paths as the Outrageous Love Ambassador, whatever that means. Still don't know, but it sounds good. So I just joined the team and started just doing whatever needed to be doing, and it felt really good to just be of service and just give and participate. And I've always been pretty good at creating my own worlds, I guess. So I started just giving, but then at some point I started kind of creating my own job in One Mountain Many Paths, and then one thing led from another, where another person was stepping back from her job, her role as executive director of the center, and then I kind of stepped into that.
And for people that aren't familiar with One Mountain, Many Paths, can you just give a little overview of what that is?
Yes, it's a weekly broadcast with every Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific time with Dr. Marc Gafni, where we share the Dharma, share these teachings, whatever is alive in him, what he's writing on in that week. And then it's also a whole community of people around that practicing together, sometimes often working together on different kinds of projects. Before I started to work with Mark, I met him now 8 years ago, I think, at the Outrageous Love Festival. And they always say that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But I always feel like I wasn't ready at all. In a way, of course, I was ready to meet him, to know that he existed. But it took me many more years to, like I said, to grow up and to mature, to finally be ready to really step in, to study with him one on one in what he calls Holy of Holies, and really go on into that deep dive with him. And since I did that, my whole life completely changed. So maybe we'll talk more about that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
what's that been like? What's been the experience of the study with Mark?
yeah, um, so many layers. One very big one is claiming my power, and showing up in leadership. So really feeling and realizing and waking up to who I truly am, and that I'm a very powerful being, and that I can impact not only the world around me, but impact the global stage, and that we actually get to play a much larger game, the way that he says it. So that's a huge part. I was very much stuck in the self-help world, I guess, or the new age world. That was kind of my whole world, like self-help, personal development, that world. And it feels like he or it, the Dharma, kind of picked me up out of that, and raised me to a whole new level of consciousness, where I realized that it's not about me. It's all about me, but it's not about me. And it's really about what can I contribute, and really feeling that reality desperately needs me in the fullness of my power. So now I feel this urgency in my body, and I feel this power, and I feel this leadership, and I wake up with inspiration and motivation, not every day, but most of the days. And I just don't have time anymore to process and do more therapy because I think I'm broken. It's a whole new energy and a new world. And of course, the whole other section of receiving this transmission of the dharma of the phenomenology of Eros, and really studying that and really embodying that, and going on a deep journey with myself in that.
Yeah, I think the self-help spirituality new age movement, it feels to me like it's a response to there being a collapse of a framework for a path to enlightenment. And I feel that within us, we all, we can feel like something's missing. And because there kind of has been a collapse of the framework that's offered with a lot of religion, because a lot of people have, I like what Mark says, which is the God you don't believe in, I don't believe in.
Right.
And so a lot of people have looked at, the God that's painted as the God that we grew up knowing, and say, I don't believe in that. So it was all abandoned. But then I think there's a lot of people that feel, no, I'm sure there's something more. Like, what is it? And because I feel like we don't have a framework for that, people then do go on their self-development, spiritual, new age journey. And I think sometimes people, it gets used as like a term as to like, not in a negative way, but almost like it's not as sincere. But I think people are sincerely trying to find that path and connect to it, and people are trying to navigate it on their own, which actually I think is super honorable, and it's been a huge part of my own journey, because I think rightly so, people have abandoned a lot of kind of religion with, how many of them became political movements rather than spiritual movements. Yeah, and it feels like, what's kind of happening at the center is almost trying to reclaim the depth and the perennial teachings, but without the political or the politicized aspects, and more about the framework, the depths, the perennialism, and the and that framework, but around the deep spiritual connection. That's what it appears to be to me.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the same way, and also in honor of spirituality and New Age, because that has been my journey for over 10 years, maybe longer, and it has brought me here. So it's totally beautiful, and I'm not saying that there's, yeah, and it's yeah, it plays its role in the symphony, I guess. And yeah, my experience with it is that we are seeking and we're looking for something, so we find some things, but it can't really take us home because it doesn't have the roots and the depth of what a religion does have. And when we say religion, it doesn't have to be the mainstream religions the way that we know them, the dogmatic religions, but there's also an undercurrent, a mystic lineage in every religion that is kind of at the root of it, that there's actually a transmission that has been transmitted for thousands and thousands and thousands of years from master to master to master. And being able to study in that lineage and receive the transmission of that lineage, and actually also be willing to study with a teacher and learn and study, like everything in life we have to learn. If I want to learn how to play the guitar, I get a guitar teacher, and he or she teaches me how to play the guitar. But then when it's about spirituality, of course, there's so much sensitivity around it, or reconnecting to God or spirit, that we fear having a teacher. And of course, because of the cultural history and all the pain that we collectively experienced and created in that, we have a fear around that. But I think that's also part of the reclaiming, like you said, reclaiming religion, but also reclaiming hierarchy in spirituality, in awakening, that there's actually people who studied for this for over 50 years and who've practiced for 50 years, and that actually have something to teach us.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe the thing that it's good for people to clarify around the hierarchy piece is that it's a hierarchy within an understanding of something, not this
Right.
person is a more valuable being because they know more.
No, absolutely. Yes, of course. Yes. And that's what, in the Dharma, we talk about the unique self symphony. So each of us has this unique self experience and this unique self expression and this unique self to give. And then there's a symphony of unique selves that are working together and playing together. And just like in a band or in an actual musical symphony, there's the drummers and there's the violins, and then there's the director. How do you call that person in English? The person directing the music. And if you're a great director, then we can share the role or whatever. But if I don't know how to drum, then you shouldn't let me drum. If I love playing the guitar, then let me play the guitar. So not to try to play each other's roles. And like even in the center, there's this amazing think tank of philosophers and thinkers, Dr. Marc Gafni. I could never do what they are doing. They love reading. They devour books and books and books. And then they're writing, and then they're teaching, and they are articulating, and then they're having all these discussions with these genius people. And we talked about that, like, I could never do that. No, we have a different role to play. So, but we're each completely valuable and equally worthy, and all of those things. Absolutely.
That's one of the things that I discovered pretty quickly when I was there, is that, sometimes if someone is within reach, you might want to try and compete in a certain area. The gap of intelligence, or a specific type of intelligence, was so vast. It was just, there's just no point. That's like me trying to like compete against Shaq in basketball. Like, like, it was just,
You can try. I mean, everyone is welcome to play at the court and also even challenge things, and we do that all the time. Even though but you have to be well studied and well read, and then you can. We don't have to, but then it makes sense to start having a conversation and a discussion, and everyone is completely open to receive feedback and to be in that dialogue.
but what it brought up for me when I was there is realizing, oh, I see where my strengths are.
Right,
And you don't have to have the same
right,
strengths,
right,
whether it's like a sports team or like there's different positions. There's different
right,
positions to play.
yeah,
And it was like, okay, I see. Like I see quite clearly where mine are right
yeah,
now. And it's actually quite nice to not think, oh gosh, I need to be more of that. It's like, no, I need to be more of me.
yeah. Need to be more of me. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the phenomenology of Eros, what have been some of like the most kind of profound lessons? I'm sure there's been a whole load, but if you were to kind of dial in to share with the listeners of things that would be like, yeah, what have been some of the most profound lessons for you?
Yes, so many. The first thing that comes up, that I just love the phrase of the Dharma, is God is fuck. So that there's God is fuck, God is Eros, so that there's no split between sexuality and spirit. And in my own body, kind of reclaiming that experience. So I guess a lot of people have some experience with medicine, maybe plant medicine, or any experience of ecstasy, and knowing that that field, that's the field of Eros, and that's the field of God. So this Shakti energy, this trembling, shaking energy that we experience in orgasm, that's actually kind of like a portal to communicate with God and to be with God and to kind of access that field. So every one of my other teachers said that every wave of pleasure is a mini orgasm. So being able to be in that sensuality and that eros of embodiment, and then being able to access and use that as a portal to reconnect and to become more of an embodiment of our soul and reconnect to divinity. That makes sense.
Mm.
And then really practicing that, just with ourselves. We can do that. Like masturbation is such a strange term for it, but really self-pleasuring and accessing and arousing ourselves and accessing that energy. But then also, one beautiful way of using that energy is actually offering it up as a prayer for the world. And so being able to experience that my arousal participates in the healing of the world, and that I can share it as a prayer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I'd like to get into that a little bit more, because I think for some people, sexuality is so compartmentalized, and for a lot of people it's been put into a box that's locked away, that no one can see, that it can't be spoken about, it's hidden, it's under the bed, it's out of it's out of sight. But for a lot of people, that is, they're it's not just that Eros is exiled, their sexuality, it's like their sexuality is exiled.
Yeah, true.
And
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
case.
that's what.
So when people hear this, there might be the reaction for some people of, what the fuck does that even mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I was
because
hearing that when I was saying it.
because it's almost like we have to understand the paradigm it's coming from. So from
Hmm.
the paradigm that most of us have grown up around sex being like a taboo thing, it's a private thing, it's what maybe for some people a forbidden thing, whatever it's been, it's
Hmm.
like that idea of experiencing life in a sexually aroused way, like in an aroused way,
Mm.
but that doesn't mean I'm walking around swinging my dick like everywhere I go. Like, and some people were thinking, what does she mean? Like this
Mhm.
idea of arousal, because I think people struggle to separate that
Mhm.
idea of the two things. So if we were to kind of go into that more slowly, so
Yes.
people could kind of start to piece together what it actually means. I'm really fascinated by how my camera
Yes.
is moving. I was explaining to Krista, there's been an iPhone software upgrade where now the lens, it automatically changes and zooms and moves around and will follow me. Like, um, yeah. So if we were to go into what you just said, but if we were to kind of break it down and go a little more slowly for people that aren't familiar with that, because I actually think there's something really profound to be understood in what you just said. And does this relate to like tantric teachings? But do you, maybe if there's a thread there, we can kind of connect it with as well.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you for that. And feels like a good kind of slowing down process that you're initiating. So I appreciate that. And then also because I've been on this intense journey for many years now, and like before I started studying the phenomenology of Eros, I was in this New Age Tantra world, and I was very much open about everything. I still have all my YouTube videos online. I keep on thinking I will take them down sometime, but also that was me. But I would just make videos about how to do conscious blowjobs, stuff like that. And now, since I started this initiation journey, everything kind of stopped and I went inside. So it was kind of like a cocoon, like completely with myself and the goddess alone, and kind of rewiring and restitching back together my own sexuality in a much deeper way, in a much more slow the fuck down, I want to say. Because in the tantra world, at least the new age tantra world, it was also a lot about expressing your sexuality um, in by actually physically having sex with people, for example. And now I was kind of stripped from all of that, and it was just like, stop, go inside. And then I've always had this deep longing for this slowing down process. And actually, when I was studying religion science, I was reading stories of women wearing a hijab in Islam. But these women actually consciously chose to do that and really desired to do that and had a deep connection with it. And the way they were speaking about it, I got this deep longing for these deep values of religion. And I would always imagine or even fantasize about, actually, I want to get married, but then I want to have no sex before marriage. To actually go through all those steps, there's like 1,000 steps that we can take before we're actually physically sexual with someone. So, but then I kind of projected that desire onto needing to get married, but it was really about getting married to myself and getting married to the goddess and to God within. And so there was suddenly this invitation to slow down with myself and to really feel like every little step just caressing. Like, what does that even do? Like, if I'm not, if I don't need to be sexual, if I don't need to, and then of course later all of that comes back, but really slowing down. So I like your invitation to slow down. And I don't know if it's an answer yet to your question, but that's what comes up.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think part of my asking is probably because I really want to understand it, because part of my story, and as we know, story is important. I've been on this kind of path of kind of re-establishing how I feel and how I sit around my sexuality. And I've not really been, I actually decided to hold off. Like, okay, let's put the brakes on sex from when I separated with the last person I was with. Because in the time that we were together, I went through this real emerging and awakening where I experienced sex in a very different way. Where it was the first time that I experienced sex where I felt connected to God. And that was when I went, oh, you mean this is what this is? Right. Okay. And before that, I've spoke about it on some of the episodes before, some of the earlier ones. I had this real kind of like, I guess, shadow element to sex. And when I say that, specifically around the number of people I'd slept with, throughout my 20s, I slept with hundreds of people. And I then, met the last person I was with. And, it's funny because when we look at the etymology of sin being missing the mark, I could almost go, oh, I can see why all that kind of what now seems like meaningless sex. I go, oh, I guess I get why that would be a sin. Not you're bad for doing it, but it's kind of, I was missing the mark. Like, I was completely missing it. I didn't realize it could be this, where I literally felt like it was a spiritual experience and I was connecting to God. It's like, oh. So mind blown. Then I come out of that relationship and it's like, okay, how do I do this as a single person now? Like, what's going on here? Because I don't want to go back to what it used to be. So I kind of I just put the brakes on. I was like, okay, I'm going to take time to figure this out and to see where, to establish this new kind of position with myself around sexuality. So part of the reason I was probably saying like, hey, slow down because I want to hear more of this. It's probably because I'm actually living this as we speak. No coincidence.
Yeah, I love that you're sharing that and that you're so open about your journey. That's beautiful. One thing that came to mind is that we all have, of course, our unique story with this. And so slowing down or having less sex with people is not necessarily the one road to go. I just want to say that. So I'm not recommending anything here, but it's more like, I guess, a tuning into once we step onto a path of reconnecting to our inner values. It kind of just appears or it shows up or as a desire in your own body. So I never thought about, oh, let's stop having sex or let's have sex with 100 people. It can look both ways, but it's more about being true and authentic to my own inner journey and inner truth. So I just wanted to say that. So yeah. And yes, in my own experience, slowing down does clarify a lot. And yeah, what was the question?
So I think looping it back, I think I'm curious to, having not really kind of taken a dive into Tantra or like Eros and sexuality and those types of things. I'd just love to hear more about that for my own kind of journey of gaining more perspective that I feel like I want to go further into. So if there's anything you can share around that, I'm just quite like wanting to receive if there's
Mm,
anything there that comes up.
mm. Well, one thing that I really love is like you spoke a lot about earlier about shame. I guess I don't know if you called it shame, but in our culture, that there's a lot of shame, and so what Mark also says is that we live in a planet drenched in shame. So I think healing shame is a huge part of our journey in liberating our eros. Um, so, and one thing we see in like the New Age world is that sometimes it can be a lot about kind of the more spiritual sexuality. But for me, it's really also about reclaiming our fuck and reclaiming the rawness of our fuck and reclaiming like the whole pelvic area fuck desire, but then reconnecting that to our heart and reconnecting that to our spirit. So, and I feel like this raw fuck energy and our sexual animalistic desires, that's actually the fuel that we can use to, like a rocket that we can use to really launch our own enlightenment. So the two don't really go without each other, I think. So in that sense, one practice would be to really arouse ourselves in that way and let all of our sexual fantasy come into play, but with the intention and with the container of reconnecting it to the whole, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense because I feel like, again, for a lot of people, as soon as I start to arouse that type of energy, it's then about orgasm and now it's gone. I can focus again
Yeah, yeah.
rather than learning how to kind of like almost like transmute it. So it's like this is what I'm kind of receiving is to awaken this energy and this aliveness and not for it to be stored like in these lower chakras, but to now allow it to move up through all my energy centers and to actually come online with that full aliveness, with that arousal all through my body. And now how I actually interact with life itself is in a way where I'm brimming with life. Is that the kind of
Sounds good. I'll have some of that. But also to not make anything wrong, actually, like including everything. One of the tantric principles is the principle of non-rejection. So but then in a lot of the tantric worlds, it's about you have to sublimate your sexual energy into something very spiritual and enlightened, but to also realize that this fuck by itself, that is also God. So it doesn't even need to become anything else. So, but that's kind of a paradox because at the same time, so I just want to say that even orgasm or ejaculation, there's nothing wrong about that, and we can even pour our energy into cosmos or into the world through orgasm as a prayer. So it's not one way or the other. But I think it is a beautiful practice to liberate that energy, to liberate it from shame, to fully allow ourselves to be a fully sexual, powerful being, and then to connect all of that energy to source, to God, by even in our practice. You can just sit and meditate after you masturbate, so or pray or chant. So to then bring it in, and then if there's too much arousal, too much energy, that also kind of opens it up and kind of relaxes the space a little bit if we pray.
it makes sense having had the experience, like I said, of having sex feel to be a spiritual
Yeah.
thing. It's like I can connect to it so much more, and it feels like to me that as people, and I feel like you and I are similar in this way, and I guess the people that have been listening to this and still here listening now, they're people that are allured to deepening their relationship with life, with the divine, with with all of that. And for me, part of the deepening of relationship with life, for me, I feel like is moving into this
Mm.
space and this understanding, because again, it feels like a part of me that I feel like in so many different ways of my life, I've put effort into wanting to evolve and to raise my consciousness in areas. And I feel like this is the area, this is why I said I kind of put the brakes on it a little bit. It's because I almost want to take the time to dive into this and go, okay, so what's the awakening of my personal and unique relationship with sexuality? Because what I can witness is how it used to be is not what I want to return to. That's not it. I can feel within me, no, I'm definitely a lord, to use some of Mark's terminology. I'm a lord to something else. And I feel like I want to, deepen that knowing of what that is. And is any of this covered in like the mystery school?
Probably not like, well, yes, actually. Like it's not like we say, it's not about sex, it's all about sex. So this mystery school is not specifically about sexuality, but it is about, and it always is. So, but it is about like I said, opening up our body channels like we do with Christina Kincaid, really accessing that Eros energy and then liberating it in our body. So that's totally part of it. And also the whole transmission of Eros is part of it, and it's in everything. Whether we talk about existential risk or first principles or story or value, everything is Eros.
Mm.
So it's and there's a huge difference. And I just want to say this from my own experience between studying or doing a tantra course. Like I've seen almost everything, of course not everything, but at some point it was just more of the same. Like I've done so many tantra trainings, um, and it's nothing compared to this, where there's an actual transmission, like I said, from this lineage, and this transmission kind of works in our bodies in a mysterious way also. So it kind of activates whatever uniquely needs to be activated in you. So for some people it can be like, let's claim my fuck, and for other people it can be like a big heart opening and a heart healing. So that's really the power, I think, of this transmission. And both Dr. Marc Gafni and Dr. Christina Kincaid, obviously, they wrote together A Return to Eros, but they really are lineage holders of this transmission. So just being in that field, I think, is all about awakening Eros and reclaiming Eros and becoming a cosmo-erotic human in person.
Mm. As you say that, something kind of was just arising for me, and it was almost the recognition that I would say I always considered myself someone that had a high sex drive, that had a lot of sexual energy,
Mm.
but it was like on off, and there's something in me that almost feels, I want to know how to have that not be switched off. And I don't mean the the sexuality bit. I mean the energy that's alive there. I
Hmm.
want to know how I want to experience that as a lived experience of life, where that flows through me,
Yeah.
because I know I have a huge amount of energy and ways in that. So it's like, how do I now live as that? That's coming up as like, oh, that calls to me.
Yeah. 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 And that's a big journey also to recognize the shadow parts of it. And for me, I feel so like young in it and like an apprentice in it, even though it's been so many years. But it's such a powerful energy, and so that's, I feel, also the reason why I was stripped from interacting with other people. Almost like just even learn to hold it in myself, and then when it's like, how do I hold this in a way that is in integrity? And what does that mean? And how does that show up? And then all of our shadow parts come into play. Like, how am I, like, even in the past, I would, of course, many people do, I think, use sexuality to get something. And for many women, it's about using sexuality to get attention or to get love, and not being honest about our true desires, or not even realizing what do I actually need in this moment. and then manipulating men with our sexuality to get what we want. So all of that is like, yeah, for my personal journey, it was like, stop, just stop, and learn to walk from the very beginning, so very slowly, and learn how does this energy actually work. And then it's like riding dragons, because then, and it's lions of fire. It's so intense. How do I ride these lions? How do I hold them in my body? How do I connect with other people in integrity when I'm filled with this transmission of energy? One eye gazing moment can be so intense. And how do I hold that? How do I? So that's my learning now. Even just talking about it now, this is for me actually the first time in years that I'm even sharing about it. And then how do I live it? That's, yeah, that's a whole other journey.
Yeah, it's one of the things actually that I experienced when I was in Vermont with everybody. Just holding each other when we would greet each other, and the hugs. And the first time you and I did, it was like it was deeply intimate.
Mhm.
It was, you could feel the oxytocin kind of kick in. You could feel the body drop in, the heart to heart kind of connection that was there. And I think that's kind of what I feel like, yeah, that's something that usually I'd only experience. We reserve our intimacy for very, part of the Dharma, right? We really kind of have exiled it to a very few, but I almost feel like that's part of that energy coming online,
Mm.
not in a sexual way, but in this like deeply intimate
Yeah,
way. And I know that's one of the things that I feel really cool to want to
yeah,
really go into.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's beautiful that you bring in also that heart space, and that the order of it, I'm not completely sure, but I think it should be trust, love, fuck, is in the Dharma. Like, first we need to trust each other before we can even open our hearts. So being in that intimate space first, like, that's a lot.
Yeah,
A lot. Being able to hold each other, being able to even love each other and feel safe in that, and
yeah.
feel honored in that, and feel that we can be all of ourselves in that.
I'm looking forward to going further into the Dharma because I'm only just having, I've had a couple of tastes, a couple of spoons of the Dharma so far, and I know that there's so much to go. There's an entire buffet to go at. So, and I'm excited to be at the mystery school and
He
to
says he
learn.
will be there.
I'll be there. I want to
Oh,
be there.
awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, for people that would like to come along, I'm going to put all the links so people can find it easily. But what's your suggestion? I'm going to try and release this on the same day we've recorded. So anyone
Mm-hmm.
that listens, if they feel the
Thank you.
calling, if they feel the allurement, what do they do?
Go to erosmysteryschool.com, but also welcome to send me an email at info@erosmysteryschool.com. And if anyone has any questions or just wants to talk, then you're welcome to just reach out to me.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah. Thank you so much for creating this amazing space of safety and letting me play and explore new ways of sharing about my journey and about this amazing Dharma that has been so life changing for me. And I really appreciate your depth of feeling and your heart that really creates this beautiful container. Thank
Thank you. I'm looking forward to the world getting to see more of Krista as she emerges from this cocoon.
you. Right.
For the butterfly to emerge.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.